Welcome to this new episode of Nervustrack. Today, we're going to have 3 cases that will really surprise you. The first one happened in a house in Bahía Blanca where an entire family lived through a real-life horror movie.
Because in that house in Ingeniero White, there was no sense of peace. Someone was always watching you. You were never alone. You were never going to be alone.
The second case corresponds to an event that happened on Route 2, where once again a family encountered an entity during the night. Moreover, the gravity of this case lies in the fact that they suffered a severe accident as a result, which nearly cost them their lives. And finally, I ask you to stay until the end because I'm going to show you a video that was taken from a security camera in a nursing home in the western area where you can see something that really, at the very least, draws attention. I would like to know your opinion about everything you see there. Remember that you can send me your own paranormal experience to the WhatsApp number currently shown on the screen. It doesn't matter how many voice messages you send, it doesn't matter how long they are. You can also add videos, photos, or anything else you think is necessary to complete your story and make it as complete as possible. I'll watch and listen to all of this later, and if I have any questions, I'll write to you. Friends, let's not waste any more time and start this new paranormal story right now. Welcome.
I'm Veronica, and I wanted to share a few paranormal experiences I've had since I was very young. It was a house where we all experienced many situations, everyone who lived in that house, which was my mom, my dad, me, and my 5 siblings. Today, the house is no longer there. They tore it down and built a new house, and in the back, they made an apartment complex. Honestly, I don't know where to start, since it's something I haven't talked about with many people. Only a very close circle of mine knows these things.
Back then, we lived in the coastal town of Ingeniero White. This is in Bahía Blanca, where there are all kinds of buildings, some very new, but many others extremely old. In our case, it was a chorizo-style house, quite old, built entirely of wood with sheet metal roofs. A large part of its floors were also made of wood with planks, to be precise, but also some rooms had tiles, something quite common in houses from that era. You entered this house through a very long hallway that split into 2. We never understood why they had done this, but that's how it was. There was also a wooden eave that formed a kind of cross, and it always caught our attention. The land was big, very big, it almost took up the entire length of the block. And the house approximately only took up about 30%, so the rest was yard and garden. A detail that we will understand later, but I ask you to remember it, is that initially a woman lived in this house who was called La China. It's not time to clarify who she was, because as I said, later on we'll learn a bit more about her. I think the best thing would be to start from the beginning, when I was younger and when everything started. At first everything was very calm, but as the months and years went by, everything became much more complicated, to the point where we doubted our own sanity. At the front of this house, entering through the hallway, and you will see this on the map we have on the screen, you find yourself in a fairly large room that was used as a storage area, like a shed to keep things. That is, the door was always locked unless one of us was inside for some reason. Sometimes we played there as kids or went in to look for something specific. My parents. Next to this room was my parents' bedroom. Then there was another fairly large room where my siblings and I slept. Then there was the dining room, which was the entrance to the house, followed by the kitchen, the bathroom, the laundry room, and after that, everything else was the patio and garden. To really understand this, we have to imagine, as I told you, a chorizo-style house where all the rooms are right next to each other, forming a very long, narrow house. To begin to learn about some of everything that happened in this house, I can tell you that in that room we used as a storage area, like a shed, the one that was at the very front. We started to feel that there was something bad inside. I don't know how to explain it properly, because I was a child. But the strangest thing was that not only did my parents feel it and see it, my siblings did too, just like I did. In the moments when you went in alone, you would find a man, a person who was usually standing in a corner and watching you. He wouldn't just do that, he would force you out of the place. It wasn't with words, you felt it inside your head. That person or whatever it was didn't want us to be in there. There were moments when we were all there and nothing happened. You couldn't see him, but if someone went in for some reason alone, it was almost certain you'd run into him. And I can assure you that look is impossible to forget, no matter how many years have passed. Now we're going to move on to the next room, my parents' room, where there are 3 things to highlight. The floor was made of wooden planks, so there was no way to take a single step without it creaking. The light switch was, for some strange reason, at the opposite end. That is, you had to enter the room in the dark, walk all the way to the other end, and only then could you turn on the light. Finally, it was the room of the previous owner, that woman nicknamed La China, as I told you before. And from what we understand, she died in there. We found out that it was her room and that she died in there because we started seeing her. Just like you heard. And as a result of all this, after talking to different neighbors, we found out a lot of information about her. The thing is, you could see this man from the other room just like that. Both my mom, my dad, and my siblings saw this woman, the Chinese woman, inside the bedroom. Sometimes she was sitting in one place, other times standing somewhere else, but she was there in what used to be her room before she died. You could also hear this person walking on the wooden floor during the nights or afternoons. But when you got closer or turned on the light, everything would calm down. What it usually did was follow you with its gaze, and when you turned on the light switch, it would disappear. Other times, it would whistle at you as if challenging you or seeking your attention. We don't know, but it didn't utter a single word. It was something terrifying on one hand and impressive, and over time it became normal in our family.
And sometimes she was sitting on my dad's nightstand, since he was the one who slept on that side. She didn't scold you, but she would shush you, look at you, and follow you with her eyes. It was always like that. I hated going into my mom's room. I remember when they started leaving me alone in that house. When my brothers were at school and I had to come back from school, things like that. I didn't want to stay alone, and if my mom had to go out, I didn't want to, I would leave. Or I would just sit on the sidewalk until she came back. So, since I didn't want to go into that room, nor did I want those 2 rooms that were connected, to be left open. My dad put a latch on them so I could close them from the outside, because since it was all made of wood, he couldn't drill too many holes in it. The house, let's say.
In the room I shared with my brothers. A lot of things happened, but something that was really impressive was waking up in the middle of the night and seeing a very tall woman who looked like a bad person. She had a horrible expression, and always, for some reason, she was sitting at the foot of my brother Maxi's bed. If you turned on the light, she would disappear, but when you turned it off, it was normal to find her there again. Another thing was that several times my siblings would scream in fear when they woke up because of a noise and saw something in the room moving all by itself. It could be a piece of furniture, a toy, clothes, a doll, or maybe a shadow that didn't have a clear shape. In fact, let me tell you that my brother, nowadays we're all adults, he's married, has daughters, and he's terrified of dolls. Precisely because of those events we experienced in our house years ago. Specifically in my case, and I can tell you that at some point I got used to it. For many nights I would wake up and see, right next to my bed, very close to me, an extremely black shadow, blacker than the darkness itself. It was standing still. It never did more than that. It was simply a shadow. My siblings saw it too. Even my mom saw it without knowing anything about it at all. This is the most curious part and what confirms that it wasn't just suggestion or imagination. What was happening in that house was completely real. And regarding this shadow, I must confess that for some strange reason, it never made me feel afraid, but quite the opposite. I somehow felt protected by it. I would like it if someone could explain to me why this happened. So, if I woke up and managed to see it, I would just turn over and keep sleeping peacefully and calmly, knowing that shadow would be watching over me.
And another thing that happened to us in that house was the speaker turning on, the speaker by itself at full volume, like turning on with a giant roar. And my mom would get up to turn down the volume, and before she could even take a few steps, the volume would go back up to the maximum. So she would unplug it, and after a while, even after unplugging it, you could still hear it. It was like it turned on, but it wasn't actually on, it just made noise, even though it was unplugged.
Not much happened in the kitchen, but there were some things in the dining room, even though it was one of the calmest rooms. In other words, in an understandable way, one of them was the following.
What has happened to me, for example, is staying up late at night on the computer. And I had very long hair, very, very long. And I remember that back then I had my boyfriend, who is now my partner. This was in 2012. We were on a video call through webcam using the Skype app. And with this call, I remember we were talking very calmly and I had my hair down, I remember. And was someone doing my hair? I couldn't turn around because I had started to sweat and I got so scared, but I knew I couldn't turn around and someone was doing my hair. It was like a person weaving their fingers through my hair and brushing it down. It was a unique and strange experience that never happened to me again. Afterwards, I remember very clearly the eaves, which is the long hallway in my house, well, in the house. My engineer White, who was very scary. Walking through it at night was very scary. It was so scary just to walk through it. Even my dad, who is a very tough person and very hard to scare, put up spotlights with motion sensors and they would turn on even when there was no one in the yard.
And in the laundry room, one of the most impressive things happened. Everyone in the family saw it, and even relatives who were visiting at the time. In that room, there was a large window that looked out to the back, towards the yard. And it happened countless times to see from outside, of course, a little girl with very long hair who was inside, and while she stared at you, completely serious, she would wave at you, moving her little hand very, very slowly. We never saw her outside the laundry room, that's why we said that this little girl lived in that place. One detail that may or may not be important, I don't know, is that many times while working in the garden, for different reasons, bones were found. Obviously, we didn't know what they were or why they were there. We imagined that they could be from animals that were buried before we went to live in the house. But we always had that doubt whether everything that happened was or wasn't related to some of these remains. As for China, we tried to find out everything possible about her, and we couldn't tell if she was involved in strange things or not, specifically speaking about witchcraft. Many neighbors only confirmed her name and that she lived there until her death, but not much was known about her. And trying to learn a little more about those entities that people saw in each room, we never managed to find out why they were there. It was as if the house was some kind of portal or something similar that at some point trapped several souls indefinitely. Luckily for my family and for me, it was only the fear and the shock of encountering something unexplained. We never suffered physical attacks. Nowadays, I don't know if paranormal things still happen in this apartment complex because I imagine that even though the house is no longer there, the entities are still there, looking for that place they found to take refuge forever.
Nothing. It was a very stressful situation and very ugly also. I remember that we moved to August 14, 2013. And honestly, it was really strange to go to bed in the new house and not feel anything. But nothing. Because in that house in Ingeniero White, there wasn't a feeling of peace. Someone was always watching you, or you knew there would always be someone. You were never alone. You were never going to be alone.
And now, as I mentioned at the beginning, we're going to hear the testimony of a person who tells us what he experienced with his family on Route 2 when they crossed paths. With an entity that, as we already know, is often seen repeatedly, usually near the abandoned church of Viborata. But there are also other places where it's seen that make us wonder if it's the same entity, or if it's another one. What you're going to hear is a series of audio messages that this person sent to his son, telling him everything that happened that night. And don't go away, because after this we're going to watch that video taken from the security camera in a nursing home in the western area.
This was on Route 2, kilometer 321. That's around General Piran. This is at the level of General Piran.
Look, we were just talking about that because it's like I'm seeing again what I saw, but I don't know how to explain it. It wasn't an animal, it wasn't a person. So you have an idea of what I was explaining to her, Lily? It had a kind of long cone, but it wasn't a cone. It was all the same and black, something black that I saw. It suddenly appeared right in front of me. Now what I'm saying is, if I had run it over, the front of the car would have to be damaged. Something, a dent, something. But I didn't hit anything. But I did see it, I saw it. That's why I swerved the steering wheel, and that's when, well, I messed up by hitting the brakes, and that's when the whole story started. But I saw it, and I'm seeing it right now, like I'm seeing it now. At that moment, I was fully conscious. It wasn't that I fell asleep or that I was tired. No. We were just fine on the road. We were calm. We had music on. I even told Fady on the phone, I said, play Soda Stereo Karate, El Puente, the song Puente. And he had just put it on. He just played it, and he put the phone on the car dashboard. And that's when it all started. Then I said, I don't hear it, never again, but yeah, it was something like that. What I saw, something black, it was black and tall. Let's say tall, like as if it were an extraterrestrial. Sort of something like that. That's what I saw, but I didn't touch anything. I didn't hit it. Nothing. And then, yes, of course, the car rolled over on top. The car lifted up into the air. That's also what caught my attention. It lifted up in a way as if someone had picked me up. I don't know, like a balloon, and it started spinning with the lights. I saw the lights going round and round and round, and then the hits, boom, boom, bam, boom. And when we were going backwards at full speed and I pulled the handbrake, I pressed the brake and it didn't respond. Since the grass was wet and then the crash against the tree, that's what happened. Besides, I didn't even realize it because I was in the air, and with the hits I crossed to the other lane, and luckily no one was coming. Because if not, I would have caused a disaster. I wouldn't be telling you this, nor would the people who crashed into me. They would have found the car coming straight at them in the air. Well, it was, I don't know, a stroke of luck in the middle of misfortune. I don't know, I'm telling you, I still can't believe it. I can't believe it, and... No, I don't know. I can't get it off my chest, It's inexplicable. I can't explain it.
Hi, Nervous. How are you? My name is Marcelo from the West Side. This happened in a nursing home where my wife works in the West Side. For privacy reasons, I wouldn't want to give you more details, and I would like, if you can later, to pass by. Please remove the audio so that the name of the person in the image can't be seen.
In this video, we see a girl entering. She is an employee of this place entering the room because minutes ago, or just seconds before, they had seen a person sitting on that same bed.
Now she leaves, turns off the light, and then appears sitting again. And there she is, sitting. He goes over her, he's on top of her, he moves aside, and you can see her very clearly sitting there.
And well, a lot of things happen too, a lot of episodes and events. People who appear walking, grandparents who appear walking in places where there's no one, people who are called by their name. Without anything being there, they appear. People in places where there shouldn't be any. Several paranormal things were mentioned in a test video. Thank you very much.
Friends, thanks for sticking around until the end. I would like to know what you think about these 3 cases we learned about today, and if, of course, something similar has ever happened to you. I'll say goodbye now. See you in a few days with more stories, and now I really send a big hug to all of you.